Hey, Sterile Processing Universe, it's Hank Balch here with another episode of Fighting Dirty. I've got a special guest today, Justin Pullen, the CEO of Beyond Clean. And we're going to be talking about the next generation of sterile processing. Where do future sterile processing technicians come from? How do we inspire folks to want to have a career in sterile processing? Justin, I'll let you kick this off. There is a looming staffing crisis coming. We're going to have a lot of folks be retiring in the next 5-10 years. How do we ensure there's a pipeline of dedicated and excited folks behind them to fill the gap?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you hear it a lot. Being a nurse myself, that the nursing as profession in general is aging,
Right.
And they've been asking themselves this same question for quite a while. How do we get people into it? However, most of the general public is quite well aware of, nursing.
Right.
Everybody knows who nurses are. And again, a lot of heroes out there going to work every single day, taking care of patients during the pandemic right now. So even more so, everybody is aware of the toll that takes and what that job requirement is. But as we've talked about so many times, sterile processing sits back in the shadows. It's not front and center. So off the start, it's going to take something really creative. And there is no magic answer to this. There's one part of it, which is lifted up so that people know more and more about the profession. Just
Right.
by increasing awareness, we should have a better time recruiting. But if you think about how networking is done today or has been done in the past, I've seen it with professional networking organizations, trade organizations, getting that younger population out to a physical event, never mind what's going on right now in the world. But even before that, just getting people to come out who were new to the industry
Right.
was getting more and more difficult. So I can only imagine it's going to be even harder to get young blood into the industry when many people don't even necessarily go to job fairs and things
Right.
like that to learn about something they didn't know about.
Yeah, I want to say about 10 years ago, I guess maybe over 10 years ago, I joined LinkedIn for the first time. And even back then, it was a place that wasn't as cool as Facebook. No one
Or
that I
MySpace.
knew.
Is that how far back we're
No,
going
20 years,
now?
I think,
we
would be
just
MySpace.
we just washed half the audience out.
But LinkedIn back then, it was like, yeah, that's if you're really into something like really business oriented, that's where you want to go. But it doesn't really have a lot of application for other industries. But you're right, it has completely shifted now to being a tremendous epicenter for what would have been traditional networking out in public at these conferences and at these other areas. But now folks are meeting each other with real, genuine, productive networking relationships online. So that's part of the shift for sure.
It's how we met.
Right.
I mean, honestly, the networking potential online because of smartphones has been one of the biggest reasons for that.
Huge.
I'll also just look at educational content that's available online. If you're trying to grow yourself professionally, you can find all of that educational material at your fingertips, whereas in the past, a lot of times going to the networking events and the trade organization meetings was a way to get education that you wouldn't really be able to get otherwise. And so I've seen some of these organizations evolve very well in the way that they get that education out, not to just in person, but also online. And I think that that's going to be a critical part of it. But it still doesn't answer the question about how do we recruit people into our industry that don't know anything about it today. And I think a lot of times, and this is pretty commonplace in healthcare in the past, you're recruiting people from other departments. And I'll be honest with you, I'm at a loss. There's got to be some sort of a connection to pull somebody into the industry. So just talking to people that you meet in passing in the hallways might be one way to find people to bring into the industry.
It's not going to be compensation at this point, and we've talked about this in a number of other contexts, but we're not going to be able to throw enough money at people out in public and say, hey, this is the top 10 highest paid healthcare career, because it's not even close. So yeah, it's going to have to be something else, Justin, that keys in to a heart, to a purpose, to a culture, to a mindset. I know, just practically speaking, one of the most successful ways I've seen this done is through developing high school programs for sterile processing training. We actually had one of those down in San Antonio, and it was a healthcare careers high school. So it was a specialized high school to begin with, but they had a sterile processing program that juniors and seniors could take. They do their clinicals, they prepare for certification exam, and then by the time they graduate high school, they're ready to step into sterile process immediately. So you got 18-year-olds coming right out of a high school with their credentials, ready to start working. That was a successful model, but I don't know how scalable it is to solve all of the
Well, even if it applied to a technical school, as those
right.
are beginning to emerge more and more across the country. And I think the biggest thing that's always held that back, not to harp on the compensation, but it's the ROI. If you're going to pay to be trained in something, is it going to actually raise how much, you can earn? And even if it's not earned day one on the job, it ought to at least increase your earning potential over time.
Right.
And so I think as we see some changes in the way that sterile processing is viewed as a profession and how much time it takes to really develop somebody who has the breadth of understanding,
Hmm.
critical thinking, experience. I think as more respect for that comes, then we will see that, and then more technical schools. I think high school programs are a great place to start. And the other thing that's really great about that is you can see if you're helping foster that. Yes, it's going to take time out of your department, but you're going to have a pool to choose from, and you're kind of
Right.
already going to know what their aptitudes are.
Right.
You're already going to know what their attitudes are. You're already going to know how well they'll fit into the department. And here's one critical thing I'll say is this is a way into healthcare. So it's really important from a leadership perspective as you introduce this to these high school students who are looking at a future to get them excited about sterile processing. It's okay if sterile processing is a stepping stone.
Right.
It's okay for them to do this and learn more and get experience and get into the healthcare organization while also going to school. And maybe they're going to get a degree in healthcare management. Maybe they're going to get a nursing degree. Whatever it is, maybe they'll go to school and continue on and do radiology. But one of the things that's a major selling point is the fact that they become an employee of a hospital with lots of career opportunities that exist within it.
Right.
And so, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be a long-term and lifer in sterile processing. I'm just saying you definitely open it up if you give them vision.
Well, and what is magical about sterile processing is there is a bug. People talk about, I got the
Mm-hmm.
bug, and there is countless stories out there for folks who started in sterile processing, wanted to go to nursing school, wanted to do 100 other things besides sterile processing, but guess
And
what?
just loved it.
They became a lifer, they fell in love with it, they become a supervisor, manager, director, an educator, a trainer, preceptor, whatever it was. They got that vision and that passion that you're talking about in a place they didn't expect it. So it's still worth it for us, to your point, to bring them
Mm-hmm.
in to say, yeah, if you want to grow, this is a great place to start growing, but then hold out because many of those will stay.
Yeah. And the only reason I say that is just think about where you were at when you were coming out of high school and you were 18.
Right.
Like a world of possibilities. And so the last thing you want to do is make somebody who's at the very beginning of their professional career feel limited in a box, that they're going to be constrained. And so it's also about being fair to them and that they have their whole lives ahead of them. So giving them vision, that leadership is something that they're going to just really gravitate to. And if you give good leadership, it's only going to make more of them want to stay in sterile processing
Huge.
and pay that forward. It's when we don't invest in them,
Right.
we make them feel like they're in a box and they're constrained, that they become disgruntled and want to move on. So we can remove that from the equation and do this industry a real service.
I'll close with just putting a little teaser out there for career ladders. We've talked about this on the podcast before and on a couple of other videos, but the importance of building in that growth opportunity, to your point, Justin, especially for potential new folks coming in. They don't want to feel like I'm going to have to work the same job for 20 years until I have an opportunity for a promotion. If you have a very clear career ladder and a pace for growth, it can incentivize those driven young folks out there, millennials and lower, who want to work and be rewarded quickly if they do a good job. Now that doesn't mean that it has to happen quickly. We understand the dynamics and departments and everything else, but If you don't have a career ladder, that's really putting your department behind the eight ball for pulling in these young, driven folks who want to grow in their career, potentially in sterile processing. So I want to thank you guys again for tuning in today. Hopefully,
Great episode.
this challenges the way that you think about the future of sterile processing and talk about it to those outside of the hospital setting, for folks on the street, for young folks that you know who are thinking about what they want to do with their lives. I hope that they choose sterile processing. And I want to encourage you, as always, to keep fighting dirty out there. Stay tuned to more content through the Beyond Clean YouTube channel, and we'll see you again soon.